guys are well.
Brian, with the
Sorry. Why is drafting a quarterback such an inexact science, and what are the challenges that a talent evaluator faces as he tries to project from college to the NFL game?
Well, I think it's probably probably the toughest position of all professional sports to play. The amount that is on that guy's plate, pre-snap to post-snap and everything that goes into it, the amount of information he has to process in such a limited amount of time, all the leadership stuff, the intangible stuff that go along with it. It's just an exceptionally hard position to play. There's a certain amount of athletic gifts and talent you have to have, and then there's so much more beyond that. And I think the thing that I think is lost at times is how much of it has to be developed over time. And so, you never really know until you have that time to try to develop a guy, whether he's really going to be able to do it at a high level or not. So, it's a tough league to excel at that position for sure.
With that, do you think it's a net positive to have, transfer portal gets guys more exposure to different schemes, and they're coming out with a higher volume of reps? I know that could be different cases, but generally, is that better for you guys?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure that I've contemplated a ton. I think, for me, I've always thought certainly the amount of time and games you've played in college, I think really does equate to some success at times. And over my time in the league, that's gone down a lot. These quarterbacks are coming out earlier, and they seem to have less starts under their belt at times. I think the exposure to different schemes certainly can be helpful, but knowing a scheme inside and out at a very, very high level, I think would be more important. Because I think again, even in our league, if you're constantly switching schemes on a quarterback, it's going to be really, really tough on him to excel at a high level. We've had an ability in Green Bay, when Brett was there under a certain scheme for a long time, then Aaron transitioned right into the same scheme for a super long time. So we haven't had a lot of schematic changes on offense for a long time, and I think that really benefits a quarterback to play at an elite level.
Some prospects are declining the cognitive testing. Here, I'm wondering what that does to your evaluation of a prospect. Like how much maybe you miss if they don't do that, and what are some ways that you account for that? And make up for that.
Yeah, we haven't had many guys skip out yet, and it's a very important part of our process. But it's just a part of our process. Really the way our cognitive testing works, it's not really used as much as an evaluation tool whether we're going to choose a player or not. It's more about, if we do choose a player, what are the best ways we're going to support that player once we get him in the building? So if we do happen to have guys that don't take our cognitive tests or the league's cognitive test, which because there's multiple, we'll probably test them when they get in once we bring them into Green Bay, just because it's really more about how do we support that player, what are their strengths and weaknesses, how do they learn best. It's more about that than really a tool to decide whether or not you're going to choose a player.
Ryan, a big part of both for you, Ted, and Ron has been building culture, obviously. What is in this pre-draft process like? How do you kind of find the right traits for the guys that will fit on your team?
Yeah, I think it's a long process. Our scouts start when these guys are underclassmen, seeing them for the first time, talking to people at their schools. A little bit like the question that was before about the quarterbacks and transfer portal. It's becoming more difficult because usually, when you first start scouting a player, they've been there 3 or 4 years. They were recruited by that staff, possibly. And so they've seen them when they came in at 17, 18 years old. They've seen them grow. They've seen their maturity levels go. So you have a very better sense. Now guys are hopping around a little bit more, so it's made the job a little bit more difficult. But I think, all the work that's already been done, and now we get a chance now to sit down and talk to them about some of their past experiences, see how they answer those, see if they take accountability, and just how they handle themselves in an interview process. And then there'll be obviously a ton more work going forward. But the one thing I do know is you can feel really, really good about guys, but until you put them in your environment and see how they fit within that culture and all the challenges it presents, you never really know for sure.
How do you guys view the skill set of Tucker Kraft versus Musgrave? And are those guys redundant? Can they be on the field at the same time? Do you see them differently with the way that they operate within the offense?
Yeah, I think yes. I think those guys are very well-rounded tight ends that can do everything that we're asking. I think since Matt's been there, the tight end position has been extremely important in what we do, not only in the pass game but in the run game. So having tight ends that can function in both, particularly in the blocking phases, was really, really important. And I think both those guys proved in their initial years, and there's so much room and growth for those guys to get better, but they can do everything. And just really excited about where those guys are going. Tucker really came on once Luke had the injury. So now I think the confidence and the level that both those guys are at now, it's going to be really fun to see those guys on the field at the same time.
You guys have the luxury of being able to give your young quarterbacks time to learn behind a veteran, but how difficult is it to be patient when you've drafted, you invested them, and you want to start getting a return? I think
again, it's our situation is a little unique, but it was pretty easy to be patient because we had a guy playing at such a high level, So, and I do think lots been talked about us and going on from Brett to Aaron and now to Jordan. And there's so many people that have had hands that great coaches, the players obviously themselves, but those guys got to learn from pretty good players as well. I think, and I think that's an important part of it, is to be able to sit behind a guy who does it at a very high level, prepares at a very high level, seeing what that takes, and all the things that are on the plate of a quarterback before they actually have to go out there and perform. So they can kind of, I think, as much as just getting within the scheme and learning from everything, it's about how to be a pro quarterback, how to handle things before you actually have to go out there and perform. So,
what did you learn about Jordan this year, and what do you know about the future for him, I guess?
No, really proud of him. The work that he put in, I think, really, he was very much rewarded for all the work that he was put into some tough situations throughout his career. Had lack of opportunity early with the COVID and not having preseason games and different things. But to go through the tough stretch in October and to see him so steady through all that, and just really lead our team to get better week in and week out, and to see the rewards at the end of the season, I was very excited for him and our football team. And just again, and for as good as he played, there's so much more in front of him, and just excited for him and where he's going.
Did anything surprise you? You know him better than anybody. Did anything surprise you with Jordan last year?
I don't know if anything surprised me, but it's always good to see guys come out of adversity, because I think that gives you a level of confidence that if you hit it again, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You just got to keep working and doing the right things. I think it wasn't surprising, but one thing that was really gratifying to see, I think, was how our team responded to him as the leader out there, and they genuinely cared for him and wanted to play for him, and that's not something you can teach.
What excites you about the scheme change defensively and with Jeff and
Yep.
the personnel that you actually have going into that scheme?
Yeah, great question. I think the thing that, and we're still kind of getting to know each other and stuff, but just going through the process and getting to know Jeff a little bit, just really like his energy, kind of his leadership style. I think the expectations and standards that he's going to put forth for our football team. I think that's going to be, the play style is going to be a big thing for him, and I think it'll be very welcomed. I think we've got a really good nucleus of players coming back. We need to fill each room with enough competition that those guys feel that and can grow, kind of like our offense did this past year, and that'll be on us to do that. So, but I do think we're in good hands right now.
Speaking of the competition on offense, you had all the receivers this year. Do you guys still do you see Christian Watson as the wide receiver one, or have these guys come in like Wicks and Reed? These guys come in and kind of like how do you see that group in the pecking?
Yeah, I don't ever look at it like a wide receiver one type thing or anything like that. I think we have a very competitive room right now, and I think particularly towards the end of the season, you saw the benefits of having a room like that. I think everybody understanding that the guy behind them can go out and make plays at any moment and take those reps, and I think it was a healthy, competitive room, and to have guys that at any moment could step up and make a big play for us was something that we haven't had in a little while, and it was really good to see. So hopefully we'll keep that competition going, and it's comforting to know that Matt does such a good job of scheming guys for their skill sets. So no matter what player is in there, whether because of injury or whatnot, he's going to put them in the right place to make plays.
Back to Jeff and your conversations with him. How in depth have you gotten in terms of what he's looking for really out of his personnel and what that affects what you're going to do this offseason?
Yeah, I think the foundation of what we're looking for in players and stuff isn't going to change. That process is pretty entrenched. I think one of the things that the conversation will continue is just kind of some of the things he's going to want to do, and certainly in the final decisions of player acquisition, that might factor in a little bit just in how he wants to play. But I know for a fact we've always done this, but he's looking for versatile guys that can do a lot of things. I think you got to be careful when you build a team of having too many guys that don't have kind of like a robust skill set, because when injuries hit, they got to be able to do different things. So.
Brian, with the salary cap increasing, how much does that affect your plans at all, or is it more so just flexibility with some of those contracts?
Yeah, no, it's really flexibility, I think, and how you want to approach it. Certainly gives us some breathing room to do some different things, but it's more about not necessarily the players we're going to acquire, because I felt pretty good, no matter where it was going to be, being able to do that. But it's okay. How do we structure some contracts? How do we go about just managing that? It gives us a little bit more breathing room, I think.
You're a legitimate Super Bowl contender like you do. How does that guide your decision-making process this offseason?
Not a lot. I think it's just, to me, it's every year is about, understanding that you don't want to put too many limitations on your team. Expectations can do that. So the important thing is to understand that what we did last year really doesn't have much of an effect on what we're going to do this year. If our guys don't put the time in, don't come together as a team, don't work through the adversity, what happened in 2023 won't matter. So it's really just about having that mindset of, I got to do enough as we come into camp, through camp, and into the early part of the season if we're going to have a successful year. So.
Anything in particular, your priorities? What would they be?
Obviously we have a process we're going to go through with, free agency, the draft, the off-season program. I think, again, to touch base, I think the one thing that really came out of this season that was evident was that the competition within the rooms allowed us to grow at maybe an accelerated pace. So I think that's the biggest thing, is as we get into the very beginning stages of building this team and this team working together, is having enough competition in all phases so that growth can be accelerated.
Any particular areas?
No, all of them. Yeah, all of them. Yeah.
Two more, please. Brian, with a switch on defense, you mentioned earlier about probably having to bulk up at linebacker. Does that help your special teams as well, getting those body types on the field for Rich?
It can. I think it's really a combination of the defensive back room and the linebackers, for those teams spots. But I think, the numbers aren't going to be, drastic here. And you're talking one extra guy on the 53, maybe two extra guys within the 69. But I think for me at the beginning, it's just more functionality of practice, making sure we got enough bodies that when they do want to play base with three off the ball linebackers, that we have enough that can get through practice, keep guys healthy. But I do think it'll help special teams a little bit, because I think you'll maybe have, a few more of those 235, 240 body types that can run. Our outside backers have typically been more your 265, 270, and didn't factor in on teams maybe as much. I think hopefully it can help.
Brian, what do you deem sort of unique about this incoming group of prospects?
In the draft?
Yeah.
I think it's a good group, but we were talking a little bit about it earlier. There's less underclassmen. I think the whole transfer portal and COVID and with the extra years has limited some of those guys from maybe coming out. NIL as well. If you can make a little money and go back and try to improve your draft stock compared to coming out. But the overall numbers and the depth, I think, is there, especially at the top of the draft. So I think, we're in the process right now of kind of really digging deep into, where the depth's going to be position-wise and things like that. So this is obviously a very important week for us to gather that information and kind of come out with a little bit more clarity on the plan.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.